This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Welcome into a Friday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. In many ways, it's a football Friday because the NFL wildcard weekend is upon us. All three games this weekend on 97.3 ESPN. Back-to-back day triple headers. You can hear it all starting at 12:30 tomorrow and then 12:30 on Sunday here in your home for Eagles football and the Super Bowl, 97.3 ESPN. We'll preview the whole slate and get a little recap on the state of the Eagles with Emory Hunt. We know Emory Hunt's given us a lot of great insights over the years here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get his thoughts on the Eagles quarterback situation and more coming up at 6:20 p.m. Text board is open at 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. I can't not, though, start the show talking about what happened with the Sixers last night. Because, and we'll get to the Eagles, we'll get to the NFL stuff. Don't you worry. You know how much I love my football. But what happened with the Eagles in the last 24 hours is incredible to me, honestly. I don't understand how this happens this way. First of all, you lost a game that you should have won. There's no excuse for that. I know that everyone says that they're human and I've made the argument too that sometimes we give these guys too hard of a time when it comes to some of this stuff. Last night's not one of them. It was a bad loss. It was an ugly look. And you could tell when Doc Rivers took that timeout early in the third quarter, there was a moment where he kind of was like, I can't believe what I'm coaching right now. So you have to believe that this team is just not focused yesterday. And part of that probably had a lot to do with the Seth Curry COVID positive test that if he apparently didn't get until in the first quarter of the game. And to me, that's the bigger problem than the Sixers' loss. And usually when it comes to this COVID stuff, I've become kind of like, oh, business as usual. We knew this would happen. But this feels like very unavoidable, does it not? Now, I understand that they do multiple tests a day. Typically, they do a test in the morning and a test in the afternoon. But you're telling me that the NBA's meticulous structure and setup and the way they do everything, that there is no way they couldn't have had that positive test before the start of the game? That just doesn't sound right to me. And I've been looking around all day, and I haven't really found an explanation for how this could exactly happen. The only thing I've read online and heard anywhere is, well, this is the protocol. But I know the protocol. I understand the protocol. I didn't ask what the protocol is. I asked, how does a player get into the arena, into the locker room, onto the bench, and you haven't even received any tests from him at all? No result back. How does that happen? This is not me worrying about a pandemic per se. This is a protocol issue. This is an operational procedure problem. You are a professional sports organization. You are a professional sports team, and this happened. I don't want to hear about mistakes happen, things happen, blah, blah, blah. No. If your protocols have a flaw, if there is a gap of information, if there's anything going on that is questionable or suspicious, it's got to be this. This seems like a total failure by everyone involved. And I want to know, how does this happen? And so far, I haven't received an answer for that. So we're still waiting to find out who could actually play tomorrow or not play for the Sixers. We've received no official or unofficial updates on the team, on the players, what's going on. And that in and of itself is also concerning because we know that the NBA and all the sports leagues have spent a lot of money, and I mean a crazy amount of money, on having access to these tests, having a setup basically so they can get the results quickly. So last night, you had trouble getting the result before the game started. The report that came out today is, well, multiple players will miss the next game. That tells me a lot of nothing. Thanks for absolutely giving me zero information. So in the last 24 hours, you couldn't get a positive test in time for the game. The next day, we have no answers as of 6:07 on Friday night, and I keep hitting refresh and reviewing and changing tabs and trying to find some information for you guys out there, and nothing. Nada. Zilch. I've seen more news about Kyrie Irving and his personal stuff in the last 24 hours than I've seen about what's actually going on with the 76ers. There is a failure by somebody, somewhere, to get things done. Now, the only information I have seen, and this has not been confirmed by anyone, okay? This has not been confirmed by Woj or Shams or the NBA or, any of our Sixer guys who cover it for the website. But there is reports out there, all right, that the Sixers will be without at least 4 players, minus Seth Curry. If you include Seth, it's 5. So there's a working theory that if you're without 5 players, you still have more than the minimum players you need to play, which in the NBA protocol is 8. So we will keep an eye on it. We will see what's going on. If we get any official updates, we will let you know here on Game Night before we get out of here. But the original report from Adrian Wojnarowski is that multiple players will miss time. As of right now, it's going to be at least Seth Curry and multiple other players. And the players who would miss would not be players who specifically test positive, but they are players who are considered close contact. Contact tracing has been a huge part of the whole protocol that's going on. So that's the Sixers situation. I'm still not thrilled with how this whole thing has been handled. And I wish that once this whole thing gets cleared up, I think the league and the Sixers kind of owe an explanation for how on earth this whole situation has gone sideways, because obviously somebody somewhere mishandled or mismanaged the situation. I can't believe we're even in this situation right now, that somebody dropped the ball this poorly. This is like Justin Turner in the World Series thing all over again. I'm not one of these people who's up here, crying, doomsday when it comes to the pandemic, okay? There's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to get out of this. Everything's going to be okay. I promise you. I was the guy who told you back last April and May that sports were coming back in the summer. I think I got a pretty good track record on that. But what I am concerned about is, how does a league like the NBA that built the bubble, a league like the NBA that worked with labs to create the rapid testing that we have today, a lot of you that get to go out and get a COVID test, your test that you are getting is in part thanks to the money and research from the NBA to make testing, multiple kinds of testing, the saliva, the nose, the antibodies in the blood, a lot of that is thanks to the sports leagues. And the NBA was one of the forefront organizations in that. You are one of the forefront organizations in terms of testing and results and protocols, and you let this happen. I'm just in shock still by it. text board is open. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. I mean, this is just insane. I'll get to your text in just a bit. I got to play this audio from Sal Pal earlier. So Sal Paolantonio, Sal Pal Friday on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. You know, despite what some people online may want to tell you, Sal Pal does have sources, and he does have incredibly information as a reporter. And I know some of you out there on social media and on message boards and on comment sections are going to eternally bring up Sal Pal's comments on another media platform. But he didn't say it on 97.3 ESPN, so I don't care. As long as I've heard Sal Pal on the Mike Gill Show here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, he's always given some incredible insights and analysis when it comes to the Eagles. And when he said this today, I don't know what was more shocking, Sal's opinion or the reaction we've gotten to it. Take a listen.
I would be shocked, beyond shocked, if Press Taylor is not the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles next year, at least in name only, in the way that Eric Bieniemy was and Doug Peterson was in Kansas City, where they learned under Reed for a year, and then they started calling the plays on their own.
He would be shocked if Press Taylor's not the offense coordinator. And when Mike Gill put that tweet out about that quote, social media has lost their minds. They are all just saying, no, please, no, I can't stand it. This is ridiculous. But there's a reason why Sal said that. And I think the reason why Sal said that is just as important as what he said. So that's the quote that has been circulating thanks to Sal Paolantonio and our 973 ESPN on Twitter. But here's the reason why. And the reason why is the bigger deal.
If you look at who remains, Roseman, Peterson, Press Taylor, they're all represented by the same agent, Bob Lamont. There's a lot to that. And I think, although Marty Morningwig was his client, is Lamont's client as well, I think that they are very high on Press Taylor. I know that and Lamont's got a lot of GMs and a lot of head coaches. He's the most powerful agent in the league.
So this Press Taylor situation has a lot more to do with who you know than what you know. A lot of times in life, we realize through our own experiences or through our own observations that people don't always get jobs because they're qualified. People don't always get opportunities because they deserve that opportunity. There's a lot of times people get opportunities and jobs because they know the right person or they're in the right place at the right time. And let me tell you something. I may not like Press Taylor being here. I may want to see him gone. But guess what? Apparently Press Taylor was with the right place at the right time and knows the right people. So whether you or me or any of us think that the Eagles need to do more house cleaning when it comes to their offensive staff, apparently there is a linchpin to all of this, and that is the fact that Howie Roseman, Doug Peterson, and Press Taylor all have the same agent. Now we have a better idea, a better understanding why this guy, who got his first NFL coaching job in 2013 under Chip Kelly, has hung around the Eagles organization now for over 7 years. Whether he's this intelligent football guy or not, whether he might be a future offensive coordinator or maybe even a future head coach like his brother Zach Taylor, is the coach of the Bengals. Whatever the reason is, I think it's fair to say that the bigger factor in him having a job is his connections, his relationship, and mixing a little nepotism than it does anything else. And that's a shame. It's a shame that we've gotten to this point because this organization has a lot of cleanup to do. And if you're keeping a guy on staff because you guys have the same agent or because you're comfortable with him compared to bringing in somebody else, there's a possibility the Eagles may or may not be that much better next year if they don't get a significant change when it comes to some of the coaches on this organization. And as of right now, the fact that it's only Morningweg and Scangarello that are out of here, to wait and see. We're in a holding pattern right now at the Philadelphia Eagles coaching staff. But if Press Taylor is your offense coordinator next year, don't count me as a person who has a lot of confidence in the 2021 Philadelphia Eagles offense. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get to your text a little bit later this hour at 609-403-0973. But coming up next, Emory Hunt, NFL analyst, college football guru. We're going to get into his thoughts on the Eagles quarterback situation. Who should the Eagles pick at 6 overall? Preview the NFL wildcard weekend right here on a Football Friday on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea City.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Keep your text coming in at 609-403-0973. We'll get you our picks for the football weekend presented by FanDuel Sportsbook coming up in about 25 minutes from now. And, of course, your text messages at 609-403-0973. But joining us right now on the Boardwalk on the hotline, one of the best guests we ever get to have here. We get to talk a little football. We get to dive in deep with the man himself, the czar of the playbook. Follow him at FBall Game Plan on Twitter. Check out his YouTube channel for all of your college football, NFL draft, NFL coverage. He is the one and only Emory Hunt here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Emory, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Josh. I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you jumping on, and I got to pick your brain about a couple of the things that have been going on. Before we get to the NFL playoff weekend, I got to get your perspective on, now that the Eagles season is done, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of chatter this week, there's a lot of, just clouds hanging around this organization, and a lot of it has to do with something that you and I have talked about numerous times. It's the quarterback situation. I'm going to leave it open-ended for you to take it with this. What should the Eagles do with their quarterback situation?
Well, it all depends on how much the financials weigh into it. And if they don't want to have that huge dead cap number, then you got to keep both guys. But I do think Jalen Hurts is their starter moving forward, and it should make him the starter moving forward. And it just, it's just about having a very expensive backup. Or if Carson Wentz is willing to restructure his contract and able to make it a little bit more easier to get him moved, then they should be able to do that as well. So I just think right now it all depends on the financials and how they're going to handle it.
I've heard Andrew Brandt, for example, say that the Eagles, the solution is to fix him. From your perspective, you're someone who saw him in college, you've seen his development in the NFL or regression as we saw it this year. Is Carson Wentz fixable in Philadelphia?
That's the $1 million question, because if that was the case, it probably would have happened already. And there's come a point where, sometimes a change of scenery is warranted. We've seen this happen before. We saw it with Ryan Tannehill more recently. For a short stint, we saw with Mariota going from Tennessee to Las Vegas. In history, you saw with, Jim Plunkett going from the Patriots to the 49ers to ultimately the Raiders. So we've seen this story before. It's just about whether or not Carson is going to be able to do that and have that fresh start. So, yeah, it can happen sometimes. You go into somewhere new gives you a new outlook on your career. You kind of see your career mortality staring it in the face. So it all depends on, if they're able to move him. If not, you're going to have to dig deep and find a way to get better within your own game, within your own situation, sort of like how Jalen Hurts did when he was at Alabama and got benched by Tua Tagovailoa. He didn't transfer immediately. He stayed that next year, got better within his situation, and they threw him out there in mop-up duty. He showed he could play a little bit better than what he did the year before. They got him benched, and then ultimately they needed him in the SEC championship game to help them get to the playoffs. And by him getting better within his situation, he was able to rise to the occasion and now change the narrative around his situation at Alabama, which ultimately was a springboard for him to go to Oklahoma and thrive there into a Heisman finalist, to ultimately showing what he was able to do this past season with Philadelphia.
Now, before we get to more of Hurts, one more on Wentz, I want to ask you, in my opinion, when I see him decline to talk to the media, when the reports come out that he's contemplating his future in Philadelphia, that, he feels, betrayed by the organization and all this stuff about how, he wants to be a starter. It almost feels like there's a level of denial with Wentz. Like he doesn't understand that he did this to himself. Do you see that too?
Well, I think at the end of the day, I don't know him personally. And, you don't know what drives a person. So I can only keep it between, the 120-foot long, 53 and a third, foot wide field that I cover. So if we're talking what happens within the white lines, I can give you all my thoughts and commentary on that. But for what's going on outside of that, I really don't know because I'm not there on a day-to-day basis.
Emory Hunt joining us here on GameNight on 97.3 ESP. You can follow him on Twitter at FBall Game Plan for all your NFL, college football, and NFL draft analysis. You mentioned a few minutes ago, Emory, about Jalen Hurts, that he is the starter. He should be the starter moving forward. So what did you see from him in the limited sample size with the Eagles that led you to that conclusion?
Well, Jalen Hurts to me has the resolve on what he does, that you want to, see from a quarterback. And I think that right there is everything. It doesn't matter how tall you are, big you are, how far you can throw, whatever. Are you able to handle pressure? Are you able to stay calm in a sea of calamity? And to me, Hurts shows that because he's gone through the ringer. He had to do it at Alabama. He did it as a freshman. Going through what he went through when he got benched. We talked about that, to coming out of that and being the hero in that last game against Georgia in the SEC title game, to what he did at Oklahoma. So, you see this time and time again, him fighting through adversity, him going into an adverse situation in Philly to where, a guy that city viewed as their hero in Carson Wentz to, overtake his position in his first game against a very strong Saints team and beat them. So we've seen this time and time again. He has the mental makeup to where you can see him doing great things for a long time with that franchise.
Now, we know the Philadelphia Eagles are supposed to have the 6th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. You are, in my opinion, one of the best out there when it comes to analyzing who's in the draft, who they project to the next level. In my opinion, not that I watch as much game film as you do at all, but if I'm the Eagles, there's one guy I'm targeting as 6th overall. That's Patrick Surtain from Alabama, and I don't consider anybody else. Do you agree with me, or do you want to talk me off of this bully pulpit?
No, I mean, that's one area where they're going to have to address. I mean, you just look at, what they have on IR. Avonte Maddox is the guy that played really well when he's out there. And, Nikhil Roby-Copeland was there with COVID. So you brought him in free agency-wise. So you look at, Crevon LeBlanc, another guy that was there, that was on IR. So, yes, if you want to strengthen that position, going there, I have no issue with, because Surtain is a really good corner. If you want to go linebacker, I know that seems to be the running thing for Philadelphia, just like it has been for the Giants. They just won't draft the linebacker. But you could see someone make a case for Parsons. Everyone wants to talk receiver, but I think their issues, they got to get back strong on defense. And when they're strong on defense, and this dates back to, the 90s with Jerome Brown and Reggie White and Seth Joyner and, Byron Evans and all those guys like that, when they were good on defense, or when they're dominant on defense, the Eagles go far in the postseason, or they get to the postseason. So I think first and foremost, they got to get back to being strong defensively.
Now, I've heard a lot of people in this area, because there's a lot of Penn State people in this area. They love Micah Parsons, but the Eagles don't really have a history of drafting linebackers, especially that high in the last 20 years. But what do you think Micah Parsons is at the NFL level?
I think he's a really good player, man. And, there are going to be people that will use, they will probably say he's more of a freelancer, or he's more of a guy that, is an impact player. So you could see ranges go from, someone like Patrick Willis, or someone like Sean Witherspoon, or someone like LeVar Arrington. But if you're talking those three guys as a comparison, or Navarro Bowman, those four guys, that's, to me, four really good linebackers. So, I think you're getting a true talent, and it's just about finding the right fit for him and honing his skill set, keeping him focused on the task at hand, which is playing great defensive football within the structure.
Emory Hunt joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN on Football Friday. We have the NFL wildcard weekend, Emory, coming up. A huge slate of games. I want to start on Saturday with you because, one of the things with this weekend is when you look at these games, first of all, I don't really think there's a bad game. I feel like every matchup is pretty juicy. But starting with the Colts-Bills game, this is my favorite game of the weekend. And I'm excited it's the first one because, to me, this might be the team that ends up facing the Chiefs in the AFC Championship, because I think the Bills or the Colts have a very interesting roster that can really give a lot of teams a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and that, to me, they're both evenly matched, so much so that I think it'll just come down to which quarterback can avoid the costly mistake, whether that's Josh Allen or Phillip Rivers, because they have great talent at running back. If you really want to break it down, the Colts probably have the better offensive line, the better run game, maybe better perimeter players collectively at wide receiver, but Buffalo has the better quarterback significantly. And Buffalo is playing with a lot more confidence than other teams have shown. And they're playing with enthusiasm. But defensively, I think you have to look at the defensive line, give that to Indianapolis. Linebacking core is probably a push, considering they both have talent. Secondary is probably a push as well, considering how well Indy can play within their scheme. So it's going to be a fun game. That right there is probably the best game tomorrow, quite honestly.
When you think about also the games tomorrow, before we get to any others, I got to ask you, I feel like the Bills are becoming like the hot team that everyone wants to say has a chance to take out the Chiefs. But realistically, is there any AFC team that has a chance to take out the Chiefs?
Baltimore. Baltimore has the X factor, and that's Lamar Jackson. You can't really quantify, what he brings to the table with him just being out there, man. And when you have someone equally as good as let's say as a difference maker as Pat Mahomes, albeit in a different way, then, that's the one team that you're truly scared about, because you can find ways to stop everybody else, but you can't find a way to really shut down Lamar Jackson. You hope, okay, we make him do this. Well, he's still great in that area. Well, if we take away this, then he's still very good in that area. So it's like, wow, what do you do? And we know Lamar Jackson is the true straw that stirs that Ravens drink, and they're getting healthier defensively in conjunction with what they've done up front along the offensive line, settling down and getting things together. Lamar Jackson and his Ravens are the biggest threat, I believe, to Kansas City.
How much weaker is this Titans defense this year than last year? Because I feel like this team is just getting run up all over the place. I mean, I know Derrick Henry's had a phenomenal season, but to me, if it wasn't for Derrick Henry having this amazing season, I don't know how many wins the Titans have with that defense.
Yeah, they can't get to the quarterback, and, that is their biggest issue, because now you're asking those guys on the back end to cover for longer than they should be covering for, and that's going to be a big issue. So if they can't find some sort of pass rush to complement what they do on the interior, it's going to be a problem for them defensively. That's why I'm interested to see how they handle this rematch against Baltimore, because Baltimore has gotten healthier on that side of the ball and on the offensive line, but Tennessee still hasn't gotten better defensively. So that could be an issue for them in this ballgame.
Let's go back to another game on Saturday. The Bucks and Washington. That's the night game. I gotta wonder, does Washington even have enough firepower to keep up with the Bucks, or can that Washington defense, which you could argue might be the best defensive front in the entire league, do they have what it takes to stop or slow down Tom Brady?
They don't. And I think a lot of it will be due to the fact that their offense won't be able to sustain drives. That offense is the worst offense in the playoffs. And so they're going to have a lot of 3 and outs. And it's only going to be a matter of time before Tom Brady in that passing game is able to strike quick. We saw the Eagles do a great job of moving the football against Washington up until they decided to put Nate Sudfeld in the game because they were afraid that, Jalen Hurts is going to actually go down there and win it. We won't see that situation play out against Tampa. Tampa's offense is ridiculous on both sides of offense, run game, pass game, and Washington's offense just doesn't have enough punch in no aspect of it to really say this is going to be a close game.
The other NFC game on Saturday is the Rams versus the Seahawks. If you had to pick who is the reason why their team wins this game, is it Aaron Donald and the Rams or Russell Wilson and the Seahawks?
Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, because unless Jared Goff shows up, they won't have a shot. It'll be similar to what we just talked about with Washington and Tampa Bay. So I don't see their offense, albeit they have a lot of good weapons and they have the potential to be that way, but I don't see them doing that against a revamped, energized Seahawks defense.
Flipping it back over to Sunday, of course, Emory Hunt joining us on the Boardwalk Hunt Hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at FBall Gameplay. And for all of your NFL, college football, NFL draft analysis, he's got all kinds of previews, reviews, and analysis over on his YouTube channel, Football Game Plan. We didn't touch on this game yet. And I got to know, Bears and Saints. I feel like, on paper, the Saints should run away with this game. But watching the Bears this year, I feel like they're the most Jekyll and Hyde team in the playoffs.
Yeah, but, you look at, they still have the X factor, which is Mr. Trubisky, which is the one guy that you expect him to not show up in a big game. We saw that last week against Green Bay. When a year in, what saved them was the fact that the Cardinals imploded against Los Angeles. And the Saints have shown that they can win games without their star players. And I think we'll see that happen again against Chicago.
Will the Browns and Steelers game be competitive?
It'll be competitive because the Browns have the run game. They're going to be excited to get out there and compete. They showed last week they could beat Pittsburgh, which was psychological for their team moving forward. Yeah, they play without a lot of their starters, but just to go out and say, hey, we were able to beat Pittsburgh, we can go out there and do it again. That's worth its weight in gold. So I think, they can keep this one close, but we don't know how healthy they're going to be going in because they still have some COVID issues, which could knock some of their key players out the game.
Emory, looking ahead to how the playoffs are playing out, what do you expect, not the Super Bowl to be, because I feel like that's what everybody wants to answer, but what are the championship games going to be on each side? What do you expect to see in the AFC and NFC championship games? Because to me, that's more interesting than the actual Super Bowl right now.
Yeah, I think you're going to see New Orleans and Green Bay. And, I don't know how it's set up bracket-wise for the AFC, but if it can't be Baltimore and KC, it will probably end up being Baltimore and Pittsburgh.
Wow, that would be very juicy. Emory, before I let you go, I got to ask you about the College Football National Championship. That's on Monday night. Of course, folks can hear that here on 97.3 ESPN as well. Alabama, Ohio State. Can Ohio State keep up with Alabama? And is Alabama just too good, or are we going to see a game that could go down to the wire in the fourth quarter?
No, I think we'll see a very close game that'll go down the wire, but I see Ohio State winning this one. The reason being, all things being considered, this game looked a lot like the Florida game where there'd be a lot of points scored. But in this matchup, Ohio State has a better quarterback out of the two teams. And with Justin Fields doing what he did last week and now having that championship in his sights and looking to really do what Cardale Jones did a couple of years ago, I think he'll take care of business and knock out the Crimson Tide.
He's Emory Hunt. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. Check out his YouTube channel, Football Game Plan. He is the czar of the playbook, one of the best you can find on the NFL, college football, the NFL draft. And as all guests, he appeared today on the Boardwalk kind of hotline. Emory, I think we covered a lot of ground today.
Appreciate you, man. Always a pleasure.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, a Football Friday edition. We'll get back to your text in just a bit at 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. Our conversation right there with Emory Hunt was brought to you by weightliftinghq.com. Use the code radio10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order. That's radio10 at checkout for weightliftinghq.com. Whatever your 2021 health and fitness goals are, whether you want a bench or squat rack, kettlebells, dumbbells, cardio and fitness machines, resistance bands, whatever you're looking for, weightliftinghq.com is there to help supply you everything you need to work out from the comfort of your home. Maybe you're someone who has trouble getting out of the house because you're working from home and you have other responsibilities like family and kids, or maybe you're someone who just doesn't feel comfortable yet going back to the local gym. You can work out from the comfort of your home without worrying about anything else thanks to weightliftinghq.com. The code is radio10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order. That's radio10 at weightliftinghq.com. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM. We'll talk more football. I'll give you my football picks for the weekend and more here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here. You can follow me on Twitter at Josh Hennig on Twitter. I'll be on there this weekend. I'll be here on 97.3 ESPN tomorrow from 12 to 12:30, leading you in to the football slate of games. Billy Schwein in the locker room from 10 a.m. to noon tomorrow and Sunday. We have the triple header of NFL action. Saturday and Sunday coverage begins at 12:30, both days on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get to my Football Friday picks in just a bit, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Use my promo code Hennig when you sign up, HENNIG. That's Hennig. It's the promo code for all kinds of great boosts, odds, opportunities. Like, for example, for the College Football National Championship, you can get 25-1 odds. If you pick the right team to win the championship, you can turn $5 into $125. Also, you can get things like parlay insurance, same game parlay insurance, risk-free first bet up to $1,000 and more. But you got to use the promo code Hennig when you sign up at FanDuel Sportsbook. That's HENNIG with FanDuel Sportsbook. Of course, must be 21 or older to play, must be residents in New Jersey or PA. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. 609-403-0973 on the text board. Joey D. and Ventnor chimed in a little bit earlier in the hour and said, Josh, the protocols need to be that if a player doesn't get test results prior to the game, he can't play or be near the team. So much is in jeopardy with this team and the league. Insane to me that this would happen. That's Joey D. and Ventnor. Well, Joey D., a couple things. First of all, part of the problem is that the league is doing twice-a-day testing. So it's very likely that Seth Curry passed his test before and was clear. He gets tested again, and he doesn't pass it. So there's a strong possibility that that's part of the reason why he was even in there, because the one test said, you're clear to go. Second test said, you're not. And that's where really the gray area comes in, because there have been times that these athletes have taken multiple tests in a 48 to 72-hour period, and they're getting a multitude of results. They'll get a positive, then they'll get a negative, then they'll get an inconclusive, then another positive, and then another negative. And that's what's causing some of the issues when it comes to all the sports, because the testing, for as far as we've come in terms of knowledge and understanding with the sport, with how the protocols work, what works, what doesn't work, what are the best ways to stop the transmission. For everything that we know by now, the testing is still a bit of a dark area that nobody fully understands, because nobody has been able to answer the question why someone can take multiple tests and have multiple results. Kendrick Bourne was so angry when he missed the game earlier this year because he tested positive, then he tested negative, and he thought, well, can I play? And they're like, no, you got to test negative multiple times, and by the time you test negative multiple times, you cannot play on Thursday Night Football. So what happened, they let him back at practice, he was testing negative, and then out of nowhere, he tested positive again. Or the cases when there's false positives. In college football, we saw entire games get postponed or canceled because of false positives. This whole situation when it comes to the testing, there's so much gray area, and there's so much minutia, and there's so many things that nobody wants to answer questions about, that's what's causing part of the problem, Joey D. So I can't hold it against them that he was allowed to be in the building if he was testing negative every day and every time leading up to that moment. And there's not even a guarantee that he spread it to anybody, because we know, like, for example, in Rudy Gobert's situation with the Jazz, he was around his teammates for days. He touched all those microphones, all those cell phones, and there's only one other player who got a positive test out of potentially 50-some people who were considered at the time close contacts. That's where the contact tracing really is this interesting gray area, because we know that the league, the NBA's explanation for contact tracing is a little different than the NFL, which is a little different than college football, which is a little different than baseball, and so on and so forth down the line. So we may never fully understand all the layers that go into this. I just don't think that this should be allowed to happen. And that's where I'm totally with you. Okay? When it comes to, it should never have happened. I understand why it happened, but I don't agree with it happening in the first place. 609-403-0973 is the text. We'll get to you my football picks in just a moment. Mike and Marmora chime in. I want to get Mike's text in here before we run out of real estate. Mike says, Josh, did Sal Paolantonio not get invited to Doug's house for Christmas or something? I respect Sal for sure. He's been doing it for a long time and very well. But what's with all the setting the fire with the Eagles? Now he drops this terrible rumor about Okay, Mike and Marmora, your text is a little disjointed in front of me, but I think what he's trying to say is that he feels like maybe Sal and Doug's relationship maybe not as good as it could be because of what he said about Press Taylor. And listen, maybe the timing of some of the things that Sal says are not 100%, clean and perfect, but listen, I think that there's validity what Sal said because of his reasoning. The fact that they all have the same agent, the reason why Press Taylor has stayed on through all these different administrations of the Eagles. I don't think it's 100% a coincidence that Press Taylor has found a way to keep a job with the Eagles, despite the fact that everywhere in sports, when a new head coach comes in, they clean house. Except with the Eagles. I just don't get it. I don't think Sal is completely off his rocker here. I think that he's bringing a lot of validity to this point. When he says that Bob Lamont, who he's right, he is the most powerful agent in all of football when it comes to coaches and when it comes to GMs. For Press Taylor to have this job, there's something behind it. There's a bigger thing behind it. So, listen, I don't know if Sal and Doug had a falling out. I don't think they did. Doug doesn't seem like a guy who holds a grudge against somebody, and Sal doesn't seem like the guy who's going to, find a way to make his own sources mad. Okay? Sal's got impeccable sources. So, I know sometimes he says stuff and people scratch their head, but Sal's bringing a lot of juice to this story with Press Taylor. It's very much more fact-based than anything else. So, but Mike and Marmora, I appreciate you texting in. 609-403-0973 is the text board. All right. The Saturday games, I think, are pretty straightforward, okay? I think that the Bucs beat Washington. I think most people would agree to that. I think that the Seahawks, I'm with Emory. I think that the Seahawks beat the Rams. I just don't have faith in Jared Goff, even if he does return. The game that I'm most interested in, though, like I said earlier, is the Colts and the Bills. This might be the game of the weekend. I am definitely hitting that 6.5 on the FanDuel Sportsbook when it comes to the Colts. I don't think the Bills are running away with this game. I think the Colts have a very, very good defense. I think that the Bills, they may still win this game, but I think the winner of Colts-Bills is the team that goes to the AFC Championship game to face off with the Chiefs. I would take that 6.5 because I think it's going to be the team wins by a field goal in this game. I really do. I think it's a field goal kind of game. 110%. With the Sunday games, that's where things get a little more interesting. I'm definitely all on the Ravens. I don't think the Titans defense is going to be able to stop them. I've talked about here the FanDuel same game parlay. On the FanDuel Sportsbook, you can take the Ravens -3 and parlay that with a 54.5. Put them together, you get a nice little parlay out of one single game. I got to think the Steelers are going to beat the Browns, and I got to think the Saints are going to win. If there's going to be any team that is not the favorite gets upset, it's got to be the Colts. I just don't see a way the other teams win their games. The only team that is an underdog that I have no faith in, but I wouldn't be completely shocked if they won, is the Rams. Otherwise, I just don't think Washington has the offense to beat the Bucs. I don't think the Titans can stop the Ravens at all this time around. I don't think the Bears... I don't think the Bears are good enough. I just don't think they're good enough to beat the Saints. And it's a shame that the Browns have missed so much time this week because of COVID protocols. Because if they were 100% healthy, if they were 100% clear of the protocols, I think the Browns-Steelers game would be extremely close and competitive. But I think because of circumstances, I think the Steelers just run away from them. Those are your football picks for a Football Friday here on GameNight 97.3. ESPN brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm Josh Hennig. I'll be back on tomorrow for 12 to 12:30, leading you up to the NFL coverage of the NFL players after Billy Tron in the locker room right here on 97.3 ESPN.